Good evening, Atlanta. Welcome to another edition of Five Stripes Tonight. My name is Sydney Hunt. I am an editor at Dirty South Soccer, and it has been a while. It has been a while since we have been live here on the old Instagram channel. Thanks, by the way, so much for joining us tonight, wherever you may be. I said Atlanta, but I know there are a lot of people listening from elsewhere, or watching from elsewhere. So thank you for tuning in. Again, my name is Sydney Hunt. I am an editor at Dirty South Soccer, SB Nation's home of everything Atlanta United. Of course, we are on an international break, the FIFA international break, and we have no MLS soccer to talk about. But we do have plenty of news regarding Atlanta United, as you know, as well as the U.S. men's national team and even the U.S. women's national team. Joining me to talk about all of that is my good friend, Mr. Bart Keeler. He is, there's a terminology. It's called multi-hyphenate. I don't know if you're a multi-hyphenate, but you're the president of the Atlanta chapter of the American Outlaws. You are, yes, see the scarf right behind you. You are a podcast host. You host the Soccer for Us podcast, which is part of the Soccer Down Here network. John, Jason, Jerry did a terrific job with that. And you're an Atlanta United fan as well. But
That's correct.
thanks for coming on. How are you?
I am wonderful, actually. It's been a great week to be a U.S. fan. Thanks for having me, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, man. Good to have you. Good to have you. We'll get to the U.S. momentarily, but I kind of naively thought it would be. And by the way, if you have any questions for Bart, any questions about Atlanta United, U.S. men's, women's national team, drop them down in the comments, and we will get those answered for you. Bart, I thought it would be a nice, calm week in Atlanta United world, but had a little situation with Emerson Hyndman. Obviously, a big blow to the team because Hyndman has shown a lot of improvement under Gary Heinze in this 2021 season thus far. Really like the way he's played. Really liked what he's contributed to the team thus far. But unfortunately, he has been lost in ACL, and it appears that his 2021 season is over, as well as maybe parts of 2022. Give me your thoughts on how that affects the team and what the club can do in his absence.
Yeah, well, first off, that's as we saw last year with Josef, and we've seen with a lot of players, an ACL injury is pretty catastrophic, and really just ultimately it sucks for the player. And I hate that for Emerson, who is, as you pointed out, really growing into more responsibility and kind of a better player under Gabriel Heinze. So that on the top level just sucks. But when it comes to Atlanta United, it's really quite a blow. And I know there's been, I don't want to say hate for Emerson, but just like this question of, is he worth it? Is he the guy we really need in that situation, in that position? But he's been a reliable performer, especially this season. And that's just one guy in the midfield that you're losing when, your backup, Franco Ibarra, Mateus Rossetto, are those the guys that you're as comfortable with as you were Emerson Hyndman? So, I mean, it's at the top level, it sucks for Emerson. For the club, it sucks because you had a really good rapport with the midfield trio that you had built between, at least the duo between Sosa and Hyndman, and then whoever else was playing next to them. It's going to be hard to replace that because Emerson was really doing some things that I think Heinze wants from that type of player, moving the ball both side to side, but also stretching the field, moving the ball vertically so that other players could stretch the field. We saw that against Nashville, how important it was to quickly turn and hit a ball diagonally, hit a ball over the top, or just connect a pass up the field. And Emerson was starting to do that. And it can't happen at a worse time during an international break.
Exactly.
In a training session where there's, apparently there wasn't even contact. It just sucks.
Yeah, I mean those non-contact injuries are just the worst. You don't really see them coming. You brought up you kind of alluded to a good point about Hyndman, and I think a lot of that has to do with sort of the blowback that Boca Negras gotten within the past few weeks.
Yeah.
on the heels of Felipe Cardenas' article in The Athletic. And I see Felipe's joined us, by the way, so good evening, Felipe. Good to have you here. But yeah, he wrote a kind of really good breakdown of the Atlanta United situation under Bocanegra over the first couple of years of the club's existence, and I think he alluded to it again, but when a lot of people saw, I guess, how much he was being paid and I guess for how long, it started to stir up those thoughts as to, is the guy worth it, like you were saying? But I want to ask you, is he worth it? Is he worth the investment that Atlanta United made to bring him in?
That's a tough question because I think that he is the type of player that you need in that position. Unfortunately, and no one will be, but he's not Darlington Nagbe, which is the one person that everyone talks to and everyone turns to. I get that. But I think when you looked at even under Frank de Boer, who, we can talk about that at length if we wanted to, ad nauseum. But I think even then he was a reliable performer. And before, the COVID pandemic happened, we forget that he had scored in 2 straight games in that 2020 season. And I think he was starting off pretty strong. I don't know if he's necessarily worth the money, but that's all. The problem with that is you're looking at it in a salary cap league where everything is rated on, is your performance matching the value or the money that we're giving you. And so that value metric is a little bit unfair to him because it's not his fault that MLS has weird roster rules that make you have to put certain money on players and spend certain money on players and can only spend so much of this and that.
Sure.
That's not his fault. I think he's been a very reliable performer for Atlanta United since he got here. And I'm glad that we picked him up when we did, because I think he's been the next best thing that we could have had in that midfield. Especially this season, he's been just, I think, a solid performer.
No, definitely agree. Definitely agree. I actually just pulled up his salary, 900,000 he'll be making this year. So it's not cheap. That's the borderline.
It's a good chunk of TAM or GAM or whichever pot of money you're allowed to pull from for him at this point. And that's the question, right? Are you getting that his performance is matching what you're paying for him? That's a tough debate, but I think that as a player, he's the type of guy that I would want to have in a team.
Let's talk about and you kind of touched on it about the timing just being rough. Let's talk about Copa America, and of course Josef Martinez being called up to Venezuela, Vinotinto, for Copa America, which is obviously a big deal down there for South America. Venezuela really one of the, I don't want to say minnows, but one of the not a team that are expected to win, especially with Brazil, Argentina, teams like that down there in CONMEBOL, but still huge loss for Atlanta United as far as personnel is concerned. And then there's the outside chance that, knock on wood, he something happens to him. I mean, he's still coming out from ACL, and the hope is nothing happens to him while he's down there. But I mean, it's just Atlanta United have a lot to work through during these next few weeks and next month, I should say. Who would you like to see, personnel-wise, the front office bring in to kind of mitigate not just the loss of Hyndman, but the loss of Martinez for such a long time?
Well, I think honestly, right now, if you're talking about who's going to replace Josef for the matches that we're going to, miss him for Copa America, I would like to see Eric Lopez get a run out at that number 9 position. Sure. This is no disrespect to Cubo Torres, but we've seen what he can provide, and I'm not satisfied with it. Why not, put out a young guy who is hopefully going to develop into something special? Put him at that position and just see if he can do it. If he can't, then you've learned something about that. I mean, you don't have to do it for all. I think it's 2 matches that we're missing him for. We don't have to do it for both. Maybe it's just a half, but I think that I think that's a worthwhile test to just see, hey, can he cut it? And if he does, great. If he doesn't, then It's not like we have anyone on the roster who you can tell me is going to do it better. Maybe Kubo is better, but he hasn't really proven that since he got here. I think finding a replacement for Josef is tough because he's you can't replace what Josef means to Atlanta United, and you can't replace what he means to the locker room. But I think the one, and I'm going to make sure that I have his nationality and his status correct, because the one who I wanted him last year, and I think we could go get him this year, maybe, would be Kai Kamara. He's at Minnesota now, and I'm not quite sure where he stands on if he takes up an international slot.
I don't think he will
in MLS. Yeah, I don't think he does now.
Yeah, I think it's a green card.
He's the only guy that I think that we might be able to get, but at the same time, now we're separating ourselves from assets that we want to build in other places to find a short-term solution for Josef missing a couple matches. That doesn't seem like the best option to me, but I think we could get him for not a terrible amount of, be it draft picks or money. I don't think it would be that crazy of asking price from Minnesota this year.
Bart Keeler joined us here on Five Stripes tonight. I kind of forgot the question I was going to ask you. I think I remember it now. Barco. We'll touch on Barco real quick. And a lot has been written about Barco, right? I mean, he's not been... It seems like every year there's a health issue, there's a player development issue, whatever. I kind of feel like 2021 is going to be it for him as far as how much we'll get from Barco, especially with him playing under Heinze, whose name holds a lot of weight in South America. Where do you see him going as far as 2021 is concerned?
Where do I see him going? I don't know, but I agree with you that this is the last year we will see Ezequiel Barco with Atlanta United. I think that the original plan was to have him ball out at the 2020 Summer Olympics and sell him after that. And obviously, a whole global health crisis thwarted that plan. So I think that that's still, you just move it down the line a year, and hopefully he does really well at the Olympics this summer. And then you can sell him to someone, maybe, I don't think the Olympics line up great with the transfer window, but I'm trying to think of when that closes for European teams. But I think it would be okay enough that you could sell him in that kind of span after the Olympics and before they begin their season. If not, then I think you can sell him. Let's put it this way. I don't want Barco on the roster in 2022, because if that's true, then Atlanta United is going to get left with a salary that is going to be really expensive for a long time and not get anything in return for it. So,
sure.
I think this is your last chance to get more than the $15 million that you want for him. But Barco has to do the work too. Like, that's the thing, that it's not on Atlanta United. Ezequiel Barco has to actually show it on the field and be on the field to show it, which has been an issue for him since coming to Atlanta. So I think that he would fit well I do think he would fit well in like Italy or Spain. I think that type of player can excel in those leagues, in Serie A and La Liga, where they like to have the ball at their feet, like to dribble. I think he can improve with his passing, but I think he does a good job finding passes. They may not always be the best choice. They may not always be at the right time, but that's still a development thing that he has to work on regardless. So I think the rumors that we've heard about, I think like Fiorentina has been in there, the Sevilla is one that we heard, a while ago. I think those types of teams make sense because they're not going to give us a ton of money, but they're going to give us enough to where the move makes sense. And I think that goes to a team where he can perform pretty well with players who are above him in quality.
Last Atlanta United question, then we'll switch to the national team. Conway, we had a viewer have a question about Conway. How about giving him some minutes? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's the other. I mean, that's the next option, right? If Eric Lopez isn't who you want to put out there, if he doesn't do well, then Jackson Conway is the next guy that I'd want to see. Because again, nothing against Cubo Torres, but the value of putting Cubo Torres out there and hoping that somehow the results get better, even though they haven't been, doesn't compare to putting Eric Lopez or Jackson Conway and saying, oh my gosh, they performed really well because of the age and the status of those players. Obviously, especially with Eric Lopez, I think the goal is to get him sold eventually, right? I mean, he's an investment. So I say Lopez first because I think the investment, that's a better play if you're trying to turn that for a profit. But yeah, Jackson Conway is a guy that if you don't think that Lopez is the one you want to put up at the 9, Jackson Conway can do that. And I think he's been pretty decent doing that for Atlanta too. And I also think that, again, if you're looking for a guy who can always replace, back up Josef for the time he's here, having Jackson Conway be that, and somewhere, you don't have to go get a free agent or pay, MLS rights to someone, or have to go, makeshift find a guy on some random, MLS roster relief rule. If you have Jackson Conway here and he's already able to back up Josef in that position, that's great. And also someone who can always give Josef a spell if you need it, or just fill in whenever Josef can't play, because we're going to miss him, I think, during World Cup qualifiers with Venezuela and all these things. So, I mean, you got to find someone who can back up Josef Martinez. Obviously, we found out that was a problem last year. And if it's Jackson Conway, a guy who I think is, you might want to say that you can sell him later, but I think you're also looking to develop him here at home, then this is a great time for him to try that out. And we saw it again. I mean, saw both Lopez and Conway do fairly well against Club America last December. So why not try it again?
Yeah, really liked what Conway did with Atlanta United 2 last year. I believe he had 5 or 6 goals. Lasting memory of him was, of course, when he took his shirt off on a yellow card.
Yeah,
that one game, and
kid, you scored a goal. I can't.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. We'll let it slide this time. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about the U.S. national teams. Let's start with I want to start with the men, and of course the match against, or I should say, the Nations League, and that stirring win in the final against Mexico. Some will say, it's the Nations League. It doesn't really count. I would say I disagree, because from a psychological standpoint, it's Mexico. It's your chief rival in CONCACAF, and anytime the U.S. play Mexico, whether it's a friendly or whether it's the Nations League or Gold Cup, what have you, it's a big deal. And there's a good chance that these two teams will meet again in the Gold Cup final in Las Vegas, August 1st.
That would be wild, man.
It would be
a wild matchup.
It would be.
USA, Mexico, and Las Vegas, which is already sold out, by the way.
Yes.
They sold out this. They announced that today. It's going to be crazy regardless.
Indeed. So I guess my question is, how does the U.S. build on that win on Sunday and carry that over to not just the summer, but, of course, very important qualifying stage starting this fall, where, you're still thinking about what happened, a number of years ago, the last time out.
Yeah, okay. So first off, the 2018 thing is such a weird set of circumstances. And I still to this day am just, I know people want to say that there is a big systemic problem, and it's because of ProRel, or it's because of pay-to-play structure in youth soccer. We lost out on the World Cup in 2018 because of, ultimately, and I'm not saying that there aren't core structures wrong with soccer development in the United States, but ultimately is because we had a coach who screwed us up in the beginning because he wanted to try too many new things. And then we had a coach who screwed us up at the end because he didn't want to try anything new and wanted to stick to what he knew.
Right.
And he stuck to players that he knew and that he relied on in the past, who were probably a couple of years past their prime, like 4 of them.
I think I know one you're talking about too. judging by your track record.
Yeah, there's about 3 that started and a couple others that came off the bench that I was like, this is not the guy. Dax McCarty is not the guy I'm bringing into a game down a goal in Trinidad and Tobago. Sorry, Dax. Benny Feilhaber at that point in his career was not that guy either. So I think that, there's a lot of baggage around that, and rightfully so, because I think the pressure is not necessarily on these guys here that are playing, but the pressure's on the organization as a whole. It's on Ernie Stewart, it's on Brian McBride, and it's a lot on Greg Berhalter to get this team to Qatar 2022, because you can't miss one World Cup for the U.S. anymore because of the sheer amount of money you're putting into this development of the game in the States,
Right.
into the team itself. It's inexcusable to miss a World Cup. And I think the heads that roles were just the guys who got fired or got removed from their positions, they absolutely deserved it. But I think also you have to look at the fact that this team here is the most promising group of talent that we've had ever in the United States. So that adds more pressure to the guys in charge of this program, because it's now not just, oh, let's just qualify and it'll be fine. You go out and you beat Mexico in a final like that. Now the expectation is that you should be competing to be the top dog in this nation and this confederation.
Yeah.
I don't think that beating Mexico in the Nations League final automatically means that we're better than Mexico and, oh, Mexico's dying off and the U.S. is in its ascendancy. Let's not pretend like Mexico is just somehow going to like not be a good, a top team. They're still the 11th ranked team in the world for a reason. But the U.S. has shown promise. And I think the Nations League win was just this first step in the right direction of restoring that confidence in the program.
I agree. It's a good first step. It's not the step that they need to take. I think the Gold Cup will give us a bigger picture of how things will fare in the fall with World Cup qualifying, which seems like a long way off, but it's not. It's 3 months away. So we'll definitely get into that, as the date draws closer. But one player that stood out to me was McKennie, and Weston McKennie just has this swagger about him, and this way about him on the field. Of course, I mean, I can say it for a lot of other players. I love Reyna. I love what he brings. A lot of other guys, a lot of these younger players, this young core that I was really impressed with. But McKennie just kind of has that it factor about him. Like I said, that swagger, that way about him, that competitive fire. You can see it in his face, the way he goes about things. I think it was Duhu was saying, he's still running out there. It was an extra time, and he was saying, he's still running out there like the first few minutes. But who stood out to you specifically?
Yeah, well, I think you're right about Weston McKennie. He is the engine that drives this team because of the passion he plays with, the physicality he plays with, the energy he plays with, and the drive he plays with. And he has the skills to back it up. And that's something that I think for the U.S. we haven't had in a while. Was guys who not only have that quote America. He's the guy on the team that I think is the most like a throwback American player.
Right.
In his mentality and his grit and his determination. But now we have guys on top of McKennie who have skills and technical ability and tactical awareness that can take the game to the next level. Right. Weston McKennie isn't just a guy who runs around and destroys people in the midfield. He's a guy who runs around, smartly wins the ball, and can quickly play counterattacks with his teammates, or a guy who can combine with teammates at the top of the box, or a guy who is good at amazing at getting on the end of a cross or on the end of a corner kick or set piece and scoring. He's also a guy who's great at arriving late at the box. So he does all these things that are so good and needed. So I think you're absolutely right to point him out as probably he won player of the tournament. So there's a reason for that, right?
Yeah.
I think the other one that really stood out for me as a player that I think we all kind of knew was really special, but we didn't know he was that special was Gio Reyna, because of the way that he just had zero fear. And for an 18-year-old to have no fear in that environment, and to even like match the CONCACAF-iness of it all. Like, he had no problem going after Mexican players or Honduran players. He had no problem, jawing back with them. The concussion protocol he had to go through because he got hit in the head, which, I mean, granted, he got hit in the head with an actual object coming from the stands. I'm sure that hurt. But, he somehow was able to take the field, 2 days later. So that type of stuff is awesome to see, on top of the fact that he's got such swagger about him on the field. He's not afraid to take on defenders on the dribble. He's really good getting himself into good positions to shoot. And, I really thought he could have had a goal against Honduras. I know early on, I think it was the 10th minute when he had that chance and he just put it wide. And we've had a couple of those from Gio, and it's been really fun. It was really fun to watch him just ball out during the Nations League window.
Oh, agreed. And no, there's a lot of other questions I can ask you about the men's national team. I'll probably have you on closer to Gold Cup and can kind of dive into that a little bit more. Obviously, don't want to leave the women's team out. I was watching the match last night, and it just seems like I know it's a friendly. I know it's still things still need to kind of come together for the team. But at the same time, even though they had a lot of the ball last night against Honduras, even though they had really the better of the play, they could only manage just the one goal. And really, it came on a redirected header from Sam Mewis. Carly nearly scored, but was called back on offsides. But other than that, I mean, that final product was lacking for the women.
It absolutely was. But I'd also say that Portugal's goalkeeper had one hell of a night.
Portugal, so I meant Portugal. I said Honduras.
Ines Pereira had a fantastic night.
She did.
And, if it takes that type of performance against the U.S. from one player on the field to even get them close to having a good result against the U.S., I think more often than not, the U.S. women are going to be they're going to be okay. I think it was a little bit different because it was the first game that we've really played without Julie Ertz in a very long time.
Right.
And so I think there was a little bit of trying to get used to the midfield trio of Sam Mewis, Roosevelt, and Lindsay Horan. Horan was kind of playing that Julie Ertz role. She was lined up there, and I thought she did okay, but that's not her home. She's more used to being more advanced and making plays happen further up the field. So I'll give him a little bit of a pass in the fact that I thought things looked pretty good. Yes, the final ball was lacking. Yes, the final quality to finish was lacking. But I think when I looked at the performance as a whole, they were still getting in really good chances. They were still controlling the ball, not just like possessing the ball in general. They were possessing the ball in Portugal's defensive third, and they forced a lot of great saves out of a goalkeeper who had a great match. So if more often than not, if you're in that much control of a match, if you're dominating possession, getting that many shots off, and forcing a keeper into that many great saves, the result's going to go your way. And I think Vlatko can look at that as a positive that you got the result.
No, I'd agree with that. But then, of course, you have a more familiar opponent tomorrow against Jamaica. Obviously, a CONCACAF team, Reggae Girls. Very familiar foe, like I said, for the United States. Do you think that, with the familiarity the United States have against the Reggae Girls, do you feel that, first, compared to Portugal, this will be a little bit tougher match for them to navigate?
No, Portugal is a much better team than Jamaica, and I definitely think that Jamaica actually will. I think Jamaica is going to be a little bit more aggressive in attack and try to actually play more. I don't think they're going to be able to execute the low block that Portugal did the way that effectively. But I think that Jamaica is an improving team, and I think I think for more than anything, I'm hoping that Jamaica shows that they actually have improved, and are continuing to grow from that 2019 run that they had, which was really impressive. I'm hoping that they can show growth and show improvement. But I do think the U.S. has a much better chance in that game to get more than one goal. I think
Right.
I think I understand the familiarity aspect, but I don't think the U.S. is going to have any problem breaking down a Jamaican defense that is not as stout as Portugal. I mean, Portugal's defenders, I know the women's Portuguese league is not as great, but as some others in Europe, but they're still all professional players, and Jamaica does struggle to field a side full of professional soccer players.
Yeah, I'm trying to I thought they played each other in the CONCACAF Championship a couple of years ago. I might be wrong, but yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree. I mean, it should be. I would hope there would be a lot more goals in this one than there were against Portugal. But
Yeah.
I do see what you're saying with the defensive differences between the two teams. So let's hope that things might click a little more against Jamaica tomorrow. Um, Gotta let you go here. Definitely appreciate you coming on and shooting the breeze with me about Atlanta United national teams. Before we go, how can people find you online?
Yeah, so you can follow my podcast, Soccer for Us, on Twitter at Soccer for Us Pod. I usually just stick to U.S. soccer takes there. If you want any fiery Atlanta United takes, like saying I'm done with Marcelino Moreno, 70 minutes before he scores a game winner against Montreal, then you can follow me on my personal account, Barnabas Prime 19. And that was an actual story. I think I said in the first half after he missed another kind of like easy chances. Like I'm done with Marcelino, and then he goes and scores the game winner. So maybe I need to trash more Atlanta United players, and we'll should have trashed some defenders against Nashville, but maybe we wouldn't have just left guys in the box. Yeah. So again, Soccer for Us Pod on Twitter and Barnabas Prime 19 on Twitter. Appreciate you having me on, Sydney. It's been fun, and look forward to chatting with you in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And where's you want to give a shout out to American Outlaws Atlanta, by the way?
Yeah, so as Sydney said, I'm president of American Outlaws Atlanta. You can see the scarf behind me, AOATL. We're a group of passionate U.S. soccer supporters. We're a little bit tired right now, I'm not going to lie. It's been a busy week. We've had, 4 matches in the span of a week, and then we have 2 more to go with the women. You can find us online on Facebook. That's probably the best way to find us. You can look us up. American Outlaws Atlanta chapter. That's probably the best way to find us. On Twitter at Atlanta Outlaws, and you'll see where all our watch parties are. We're searching for a new place to watch because our old home bar got shut down during COVID, so that is an unfortunate reality that we are dealing with. But Sunday specifically, we'll be still watching it late, but we'll be up late watching 10 p.m. kickoff at Metro Cafe Diner right downtown, and then next Wednesday we'll be at Fidel Midtown to watch the U.S. Nigeria game at 9 o'clock. So, yep, come check us out. And, if you just like watching soccer, come watch with us. We're pretty fun.
Alrighty, Bart Keeler, thanks for joining me tonight. And, we'll definitely catch up soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sydney.
Yes, sir. And thank you guys for watching here tonight on Five Stripes Tonight. Definitely, again, thanks for Bart for coming on and talking Atlanta United and the U.S. men's and women's national team this evening. You can follow me at SHWrites, SHWRITES on Twitter. And of course, go to DirtySouthSoccer.com for all the latest news and information on Atlanta United. Until then, we'll see you next week, and have a great weekend.